Karma is one of the backbones of many Asian philosophies and religions. Korean shamanism is no exception. But karma is the rule of the universe, and not something a mere individual can manipulate. For that reason, however you are wronged, it is deemed unwise to personally take on revenge, because that would only further tangle up your own karma. Apparently, the same rule applies even when you are dead. Even as a ghost, if you try to revenge on someone who wronged you in life or directly caused your death, you will be ultimately paid a price for daring to intervene in the workings of karma. But of course, if everybody obeyed the rules all the time, the world would be a different place. Today, I collected stories about resentful ghosts taking a revenge. As one of today's stories explains, with human law, morality, or consideration for consequence having no more weight, ghosts' revenge seems to be much more direct and ruthless, making these stories a chilling read. So, here are 5 allegedly true stories about ghosts taking a revenge. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by host Anthony. I don't know if such a random custom or practice exists in other places too, but there's so-called 생일빵, usually among teenagers in Korea. Birthday punchback, should I translate that? It's basically group lynching a birthday boy or girl. It's of course meaning to be a harmless and friendly kind of event, but it can leave some scratches, especially when it's practiced by silly teenage boys. That was exactly what happened to me on my birthday, shortly before Chuseok holiday. My uncle, who came to visit for the holiday, saw the scratch on my face and asked, "Hey, what happened to your face?" It's nothing. A few days ago was my birthday, and my mates made me a birthday punch back," I said. Uncle's face stiffened. After a moment of silence, he told me a story from his high school years. A classmate of his had his birthday. During the lunchtime, his classmates surrounded him to give him a happy birthday punches, but among them was a mate named Hyung-seok who held some grudge against the birthday boy. He jumped in, headlocked the birthday boy's neck, and butted his head against the window. The window broke. A large, sharp, broken piece of glass fell on his throat, punctured the artery, and killed him on the spot. Hyung-seok was sent to juvenile detention center. A few years later, old mates gathered for a school reunion. While chattering over a drink, a mate mentioned the boy who killed the birthday boy. "Do you remember that mad boy, Hyung-seok?"
He, of course. Whatever's happened to him?"
Uncle replied. "I heard it just a few days ago myself. He's dead."
"What? Oh, that's sad."
"And do you know how he died?" Apparently, Hyung-seok lived with his girlfriend. According to her, Hyung-seok had suffered a certain paranoia even before she met him. He would shoot up in the middle of his sleep and frantically look around, or talk in his sleep, something like, "Don't kill me, please don't." She tried to make him say what he really feared, but he never opened up. And then one evening, he came back drunk and told her he couldn't take it anymore. He was sorry, and threw himself out the window. His foot was caught to the window frame before he fell, but a broken piece of window glass punctured his throat and killed him on the spot.
One careless act can leave a permanent scar that comes to bite you back. So always think twice before you follow your impulse.
So Uncle concluded his story. This is a true story from the late 70s. There was a devout female Buddhist. She was wealthy and would make generous donations for various events at her temple and would be seen praying to Buddha frequently. One day, she made an urgent call to the abbot of the temple that her first daughter was suffering mysterious illness. She would go breathless till her face turned blue. Doctors failed to diagnose what was wrong. Could the good abbot come over and pray for her suffering daughter? When abbot arrived and was led to the bedridden daughter's room, he was shocked, because he had a vision of a man mounting on the young woman, strangling her. Abbot hurriedly chanted a Buddhist scripture that was known to have a power to dispel evil, and the spirit of the man disappeared. Considering the spirit's eyes were burning with anger and resentment, he was sure to come back till he get what he wanted. But why should such a resentful soul target the household of the most devout Buddhist with immaculate reputation?
Excuse me, but do you happen to have anybody who would take a grudge against you?
Abbot asked the woman. Why would anybody take grudge against me? My conscience is clean, the woman insisted. Abbot asked her daughter the same question, but she too didn't have any idea. But Abbot could not dismiss the burning eyes of the vengeful spirit, and discreetly asked around other temple goers close to the woman. Overall, they confirmed what a generous and honest character the woman was for everybody except for her late husband. Comparing to the extrovert, outgoing woman who loved to socialize and mingle, her late husband was a gentle, quiet introvert. The wealth of the family was all the woman's work. She cleverly utilized her broad connection and information in the booming real estate market of the 70s and made a fortune. As she got more successful, the less she thought of her man's weak character. Gentle encouragement for him to try more gradually turned into belittling and swears, and ultimately the woman insulted him in front of their daughters and friends. All the while, the gentle husband quietly endured it all for the love of his daughters, but as soon as both daughters got married, he took his life at the age of 50. It was clear the vengeful soul the abbot saw was that of the late husband of the woman. Next time she visited a temple for prayer, the abbot invited her to tea and cautiously asked,
I happen to hear about your late husband. Don't you think, by any chance, he might have any grudge against you?
The woman's reaction was almost passionate. He? Against me? Whatever did he ever do for me? He was useless all his life, useless husband and father. I did everything for him. What he ate, wore, and enjoyed in his life, I provided. If you're going to ask me to pray for his soul or something, there is no way, sir, I would ever do that. The woman's contempt for her husband seemed to remain the same even after his tragic death. Her older daughter's mystery illness got only worse. Her mother took her to all sorts of hospitals and clinics, but nobody could help her. And in the end, the daughter passed away. The abbot led the funeral ritual. As a part of the ritual, he took the clothing of the deceased and went to burn it off, and ran into the spirit of the man.
Who do you think you are, trying to stop me? You saw what the woman thinks of me, and are you still going to help her? I warn you, you can't stop my revenge.
The ghost said, and disappeared as quickly as he appeared. After the funeral, Abbot once again talked to the woman, but she remained stubborn even after she lost the daughter. Soon, her second daughter, who lived in the US with her husband, started suffering similar symptoms as her older sister. The US hospitals that were much more advanced than that of Korea then could not help her, and she ultimately succumbed to it. The distraught woman disappeared, and the abbot only heard a rumor that she wandered around temple to temple seeking some solace. A year passed. Meanwhile, the abbot moved to a small and quiet temple in a mountain, and one day he saw the woman seeking to stay at the temple. She was much changed. Her eyes were lifeless and her features shrunken down. Abbot invited her to tea, and the woman talked about what happened to her second daughter. Despite all the tears and suffering, her mind seemed to be still shut when it comes to the matter of her late husband.
You still refuse to regret and repent anything about your late husband, even after you lost both of your daughters. When his grudge remains, how could you find your solace? If you keep ignoring him, you, no less, will be his next target,
Abbot said gently but firmly. In the end, the woman finally agreed to offer prayers for her late husband 4 times a day, 2 hours at a time, for 100 days. You might wonder, despite all the grudge, how could a loving father in life kill his own daughters for revenge in death? With no more human law, morals, and social codes to follow, spirits return to much simpler, more primal state. Whether it be a grudge, regret, obsession, or desire, spirits are often taken over by the biggest drive from their lifetime and forget everything else. So even the daughters whom he loved so much in life were now nothing more than the means of painful revenge to his heartless wife. It's a story my acquaintance told me, but I'll recount it in the first person's perspective for the ease of writing. I once worked for a foundry, with a furnace that melts down metals. It's really risky work, full of potential industrial hazard. You get close to the furnace carelessly, and your lungs would get roasted. One could never let the guard down in this line of work, especially if you are a newbie as I was then. So, after another day of exhausting high-stress work, I was on my way home. Mr. Park, my line leader, stopped his car by my side and gave me some words of encouragement.
Hey, Hyung-sik, you're doing fine. Much better than I expected. The delivery for tomorrow is delayed, so you can come to work a bit later than usual. Rest well.
I just bobbed my head to him because I was so knocked out even to utter a word. The line leader then drove on to the front gate. But then he stopped and reversed. At first I thought he had something more to tell me. But no, he was too fast for that. Indeed, his reversing car ran past me. And then I saw why. Because on the bonnet of the car was a woman. Her eyes were flaming with rage, and her expression was murderous. Her body was beyond bony and almost looked parched, and all her hairs were flying upwards. And the woman was hanging onto the bonnet like a wild animal and glaring at Mr. Park through the window screen. I set my eyes on her just a few seconds, but I still remember all the details on my sleepless nights. The line leader kept reversing desperately and crushed into a lorry truck that was also reversing out from the cargo. The crushing noise was loud, like a bomb went off. Factory workers on night shift ran out, some shouting, some calling for emergency. The windscreen of the crushed car was smeared with red. I rolled my eyes around to find a trace of the woman, but there was no trace. The police and paramedics came soon, but there wasn't much they could do other than dragging the lifeless body of the line leader out of the crumpled car. A few days later, I was having a cigarette break on the rooftop, and Mr. O, the leader of another line, joined me. He parted some information he caught about the accident.
I hear the police can't quite make sense of it. They checked the dashcam record and they found no reason to reverse. It only showed Mr. Park looking terrified for some reason and shouting, "Go away, go away." Maybe Mr. Park suffered some mental issue, who knows? I must say I thought he was a bit off, he said.
I didn't talk about what I witnessed that day to anybody, but I had to tell Mr. O. At first, he didn't believe me.
Woman? What woman? I didn't hear the dashcam record showed anything like that. Are you saying you saw a ghost or what?
But it seemed he gradually came up with an idea.
Oh, wait. I think I remember. Mr. Park kept a lover in Vietnam or Philippines, I don't know. But the rumor said he dropped her when she got pregnant and denied any support either. And you see, I said I thought he was a bit off. I noticed the little things about Mr. Park, like he would not go to toilet by himself, or occasionally tense up and sweat all over, like he was having panic attack. And since when he often insisted to give a lift to colleagues, as if he was afraid to drive by himself. Didn't you notice such about him too? He said.
Well, I'm rather new here.
The woman you saw, didn't she look like she was from Philippines or other part of Southeast Asia?
I'm not sure. It all happened in a second, I mumbled. Who can tell? But whoever that woman was, or whatever baggage she had with Mr. Park, there definitely was so much grudge and hate. That much I can be sure from the expression of the woman, because she literally resembled an evil. I was born with a third eye. Most people with such a gift tend to have a very confused childhood for seeing the world differently than others. But luckily, I met a shaman who took me under her wing and guided me through my youth. I call her Auntie, and I love and respect her for beyond what she had done for me. For example, Auntie would perform special rituals 2 times a year for the lost, wandering souls to help them peacefully move on. It was 100% voluntary work, for which she took up all the expense, saved a full week prior to the ritual to pray and keep herself composed and serene for the big day. Whether you believe in shamanism or supernatural or not, it should be enough to prove what kind of person my auntie is. A few years ago, Auntie performed such a ritual in September. By now, I'm just an ordinary office worker, but I try to get a day off for such a day so that I can assist Auntie. Just to make it clear, I can see and sense ghosts, but I'm not a shaman and cannot do anything about them. So all I do for Auntie on such an occasion is really just help setting out the ritual shrine and carry things in and out. And watch on what happens. That particular day, there were a dozen lost wandering souls gathered. Auntie started it with offering food for the starving souls and listened to their stories one by one and helped them move on. Among the souls gathered was a soul of a middle-aged man, looking gaunt and shrunken, clear sign that he suffered illness before passing away. He enjoyed the food offered, but didn't seem to have any desire to move on. While the other spirits moved on to the underworld one by one, he just silently ate his food. Aunt then tried to talk him up. By the way, I can see ghosts, but can't hear what they say clearly, so I just saw Auntie and the soul of the man talking to each other. Auntie was of course trying to persuade him to let it go and move on, but in the end, the man only bowed to her and disappeared. Auntie sighed deep, looking at him go. It was a long day, so I didn't bother to ask Auntie what happened right there. But then in the car on the way back, Auntie instructed me to drive to a certain town. When we arrived, Auntie found a corner shop there, bought a few stuffs, and chatted up the owner of the shop. Their chatting dragged on so long that I came back to the car and waited. When Auntie came back to the car, she finally told me the story about the middle-aged man's ghost. He suffered a massive stroke at a relatively young age. It would have been devastating by itself, but the worst was how his wife abused him ever since the stroke rendered him disabled. From the outside, she feigned a most dedicated, caring wife. She constantly slapped and pinched him, bluntly shouting she wanted him to die soon, and frequently skipped giving him food and drink, leaving him in constant thirst and hunger. On top of that, she took a guy as her lover, invited him to their place, and did all sorts of things in the plain sight of the poor man. Bedridden and speechless, he couldn't do anything, but vowed to himself thousands of times that he would revenge one day. The reason Auntie made a stop at the strange town was because that was where the man and his wife used to live. As usual, the owner of an old local corner shop was the source of any little rumors and happenings in the neighborhood, and there Auntie found out what happened to the wife. Apparently, the neighbors had no idea the true face of the woman and still thought of her as the most dedicated wife to the late husband. But then by now, she sold off all the land, and the rumor said she moved to Seoul with her lover. The ghost of the middle-aged man was still hanging around their old home just in case his wife returned there. Auntie tried to persuade him that a revenge was in vain and would ultimately further tangle his own karma, but he was so dead set to have his revenge and wouldn't listen. A very sad story, but for it was just that, a sad story, and I didn't think about it much. But not my auntie. On the day of another ritual in the following spring, Auntie kept looking around as if waiting for someone. Only then I remembered the ghost of the middle-aged man, but he didn't appear till the hours-long ritual wrapped. As expected, Auntie instructed me to drive to the man's neighborhood again. Once again, Auntie made a stop at the corner shop and had a chat with the owner. Her face, coming out from the shop, looked sad, and the story she passed on was indeed shocking. In the winter, the man's old house was finally sold, and his wife and her lover finally came down there for the last time. On the way back to Seoul, their car slipped on the snow and crashed head-on to the truck on the opposite lane. The woman and her lover were killed instantly. Auntie sensed it was the vengeful ghost's doing. She further looked around the neighborhood just in case her assumption was wrong and the ghost still hanging around there. but there was no sign of him anymore. Auntie sighed deep once again. A soul that causes harm to the living cannot escape their own karma, she explained, no matter what kind of justification they might have. On the way back in the car, Auntie didn't say a word and kept praying with her eyes closed, presumably for the poor guy. "3 years ago, I had a girlfriend. I loved her very much, and she loved and cared for me too. About our first anniversary came my birthday. We of course had a big plan for the day, and the night before I had a hard time falling asleep with anticipations. But contrast to my excited heart, the dream I got that night was grim. In that dream, I was having a birthday celebration with a strange girl. Then burst in my girlfriend and started to slash me all over with a cake knife. It was terrifying, her cold stare and blood sputtering everywhere. Normally I would have woken up from about that point, but this dream just carried on, moving on from one nightmarish scene to the next. I forgot the details by now, but one scene I remember is girlfriend plunging her head into a boiling pot of oil. I called her as soon as I woke up. I was worried if anything had happened to her. Girlfriend assured me she was fine and consoled me a dream was just a dream. We met in the evening with some other friends and had one hacker birthday party at a bar. It was so much fun. We all laughed a lot, and even bitter soju tasted sweet. It was the happiest birthday in my life because, above all else, my girlfriend was next to me. Girlfriend stood up saying she needed to use the ladies. She looked pretty drunk, so I accompanied her. On the way, I saw a table occupied by a group of girls looking clearly too young to be allowed in a bar, and stopped to give them a look. But before I realized what was going on, I heard a terrifying scream from my girlfriend. She must have slipped and fell hard to the corner of a table. She bled from her right eye. Blood ran cold in my vein. I pressed on her eye to stop bleeding, and girlfriend was non-responsive, clearly passed out. When the ambulance came about 10 minutes later, the paramedics were frantic all around her. They shouted this and that, but I didn't understand what really happened. I still hoped that it was just a bad cut around her eye. But now in the hospital, doctors said she needed an immediate operation, that the sharp table corner must have hit her eyeball directly. My heart ached to see still unconscious girlfriend rolled into the operation theater. Why didn't I pay more attention? I should have been holding her hand to the toilet. Report after the operation was even more grim. They couldn't save her crushed eyeball, and girlfriend lost her one eye forever. The bigger worry was she didn't seem to regain consciousness. Her mother came. I didn't know what to explain. I just wept and apologized. And her mother slapped me. A week passed, and then a month, but girlfriend was still unconscious. Her mother insisted to transfer her daughter to a bigger hospital in Seoul, but that turned out to be the final fatal blow to the already unbearably tragic story. The car on the way to the new hospital was hit by a wheel that flew out of a heavy lorry truck that was running on the next lane. It killed both my girlfriend and her mother. I just wanted to die. Looking at the photo at the funeral, I regretted everything. Why was my birthday that day? We didn't need to party so hard, did we? We were so happy together. We were so happy. Didn't we discuss how many kids we wanted? And who should be in charge of washing dishes when we get married? I felt I would never be happy again. Worried friends took me to a bar and silently filled up my glass, which I emptied one after another, till I passed out. And then I had a dream that I still cannot forget after 3 years. There she was, my girlfriend. In her hand was a scary-looking meat knife. With her one eye glaring at me, she stabbed her own right eye with a knife time after time. My heart bled, but I couldn't do anything. And then she said, "Why did you trip me?" I woke up. I was going nuts. The memory from the fateful night that had been buried thus far revived after the dream. My girlfriend just didn't slip. She was tripped by my feet as I turned to look at the table with the teenage girls. It was me. Girlfriend visited me in my dream every night and accused me with, "Why did you trip me?" After a week of that, I thought I'd rather die. Sense of guilt made my life a living hell, but I was still too much of a coward to end it all. Then I read somewhere on the internet that one could send a letter to a dead by burning it with a photo of the recipient. In any other situations, I would have just scoffed, but I was desperate then. Another night of helplessly watching my beloved stabbing her eyeball out to accuse me, and I would have gone mad. I spent a whole day writing a letter to her. I poured out my heart on a good 10-page long letter that ended with, "I am at your mercy, my love. Do whatever to me that will bring peace back to you. Whatever you give me, I will accept." I burned a letter with her photo that I'd been keeping in my wallet. She didn't come back in my dream that night. A week passed and then a month. She didn't return. My life was still a wreck. Sense of guilt never left me. I didn't eat. I didn't go out. I didn't meet anybody. When a month passed, girlfriend appeared once again in my dream. She was still holding the knife, but this time she stabbed my right eye. I woke up with a startle. That evening, a group of friends bursted in, that they could not see me just fade away like that. They dragged me out to drink. I drank a lot to drown the image of girlfriend stabbing my eye. On the way back home, I was hit by an object that flew in from somewhere. I woke up with my right eye under bandage. Turned out I was hit by a can that a passerby kicked, and sharp edge of the can ripped off the skin around my eye. It was bad enough to require an operation. Now 3 years have passed, and I never saw her again. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. One of the biggest mantra of Zen Buddhism is born with nothing, die with nothing, basically preaching the vanity of human obsession. When the time comes, it's the best to let it all go, including yourself, leaving no karma behind. If that were as easy as it sounds, I guess most of the evils in our world should be no more, including the matter of vengeful ghosts as in today's stories. Can you forgive somebody who wronged and abused you? I must admit, I don't really forgive and forget easily myself either. If you enjoyed my work, give it a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description, or there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. Time to go and make myself a cup of hot chocolate. Stay safe and take care.